Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we are discussing Deep Space Nine, Season 4, Episode 7, Starship Down. The Defiant fights to defend a Karama ship against two Jem'Hadar ships in the atmosphere of a gas giant.
With dire results.
They didn't do so well.
No.
They got their butts kicked pretty bad. But they won.
They scraped by. This is the most I've seen them take a thrashing.
They didn't take Odo along.
They forgot him. It was a Home Alone situation.
As I've said before, the Jem'Hadar won't attack a ship with Odo on it, surely. So, in typical fashion, they never use that to their advantage.
That's exactly the sort of thing that Cisco would do, too.
What, take someone to make their ship invulnerable?
Well, use someone as a pawn in his game.
Well, yeah, that's why he's the captain.
Right, so he would do it.
Yes, because it's his job. I guess this was kind of a bit of a sort of actiony, fun action romp sort of episode. It reminded me a bit of Civil Defense from the last season. A lot of action, not a lot to it. It's kind of a bit on the shallow side, but that's not a criticism by any means.
Sounds like one.
Well, it wasn't
Sort of.
it wasn't as shallow as Civil Defense by any means. I think Kira got some development, and Worf got some development. Not that that's difficult because he's only been in a couple episodes so far, so that's easy to do at this stage.
At this stage, any scene with Worf is development.
Pretty much. He was in Next Gen all the time, but you haven't seen that, so his development is kind of, yeah, it's a bonus. Seeing our favourite Klingon in new situations, or seeing a Klingon in new situations. He's not your favourite.
I'll give them a pass for episodes about Worf learning the ropes for only so long. After a while, he has to know what he's doing. But it's fine at this point.
He is competent. He just doesn't get along with anyone.
So this episode addresses something that's kind of weird, and that's how Kira works for someone she reveres as a religious figure. That's a weird position to be in, and that shouldn't be okay. But I guess they want a Bajoran in that role, and any Bajoran is going to see him as an icon.
How is that not okay, though? For example, the Pope has people who work for him.
But the Pope accepts being the Pope.
Well, yeah, or they'd stop. Okay, what about the Dalai Lama? That's a role that's assigned rather than elected.
But it's not military.
Well, yeah, the Dalai Lama didn't rush out to join the military. I don't think that's quite in line with Buddhist teachings.
It would be a bit at odds. But she couldn't challenge anything he says. Anything Cisco orders her to do would be divine.
If it was in the capacity of being the emissary, but in terms of Starfleet stuff, she disagrees with them all the time, which is why I kind of feel a bit of this emissary stuff is a bit odd with Kira.
Why is that?
Well, she's mentioned before that she treats him as the emissary, but at the same time she doesn't really... If she hadn't said it, we'd have no idea.
That's true. She doesn't worship the ground he walks on. He's just a boss to her if you go strictly by her actions and words.
Her excuse was that she's super good at separating her personal feelings from her work, but she must be super good at that. Like, it's fair enough, though. I mean, one thing that is guaranteed is that religious opinions are going to be wacky.
Wacky in what way?
It's just wacky. If we
okay.
introduce one religion to another religion, and they will just not get along. Because people have real difficulty conceptualizing the way other people think about things. So to say someone is or isn't acting in the way they should be is difficult to do when you frame it in a religious context.
I'm glad they don't avoid the topic of religion and the weirdness that can happen there. How she idolizes him. Now she's screaming at his unconscious body. You still have more to do. She's praying over him.
It's a benefit of this show being made in the 90s. I can't see it being this way nowadays. With the terrorism stuff, definitely. With the religious stuff, I'm not so sure people would have such a kind of smart interpretation of stuff.
Maybe that's why I'm glad to see it, because I know it wouldn't happen like this now. So being removed from when this aired and seeing it from a modern perspective, it's a novelty.
Actually, I've changed my mind. Religious stuff is still done all the time. Sorry.
Nothing sprang to my mind.
Shamefully, I thought of Avatar. Well, that has religious.
The cartoon or
no,
the movie?
The one with the sexy blue people.
Okay.
Blue Man Group, I think it was.
Smurfs.
Yeah. Really sexy Smurfs. O'Brien has a team.
Who knew?
Well, we didn't.
Yeah. He came out of nowhere.
They have names and everything.
They have shirts, names, faces.
It was almost surprising the amount of stuff O'Brien has to do all alone for seasons and seasons. Suddenly he has 4 or 5 guys doing stuff for him.
Someone noticed finally. Oh wait, we can't have one guy doing all of this.
Looking at the crew roster. Engineering, brackets 1. What does the brackets 1 mean? Oh, we need more guys for engineering. Finally, O'Brien can rest.
I don't see him as someone who wants to rest.
You don't?
He's the kind of guy who would be annoyed that he has to take a break.
Yeah, he is. Well, we see him in Quarks playing darts and having a pint and stuff. So obviously he takes breaks. And I kind of hope he isn't drinking and then going back on the job. Maybe it's just a little nightcap.
He gives this little smirk in this episode when he's told, I forgot how long he says it'll take, and then he's told he has 10. And he gives this knowing smile. Yeah, I can do that, no problem.
O'Brien's always got little smirks and looks and stuff. He's a good face actor.
So what did you think of this one overall, upon rewatching?
It's a fun episode. It's obviously inspired by Das Boot, a film I hope you've seen. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
I've seen the film, but I did not draw that parallel, and now I feel silly.
What? How did you not?
It seems so obvious now.
Yeah, all the sinking, the hull creaking, the breach, Bashir having to seal the bulkhead with Dax still in there. Well, I mean that's straight out of Das Boot, although it turned out kind of better or differently. All the stuff with pinging, yeah, it was straight out of submarine sort of films, and the quintessential one is Das Boot.
So we've had an episode cribbing The Thing, and now Das Boot. I hope this trend continues.
Well, they just go through classic movies and say, okay, this week we're doing Blade Runner.
Yeah, why not?
It would descend into parody pretty quick, but yeah, no, that would be good, I guess. They kind of do that. A lot of the episodes are based on classic films, but often the link is a lot more tenuous than this one, and quite often it's not such notable, distinct films. It's more like random westerns or something.
Actually, I take it back. I just remembered the Midsummer Night's Dream one.
It seems the action-y episodes that are taken from action-y films seem to work best.
So stick with that. Make people go flying from consoles. Make stuff explode.
Yeah, there was a fairly high body count.
Sir, those two characters that no one cared about, they're dead.
No, not him and her.
In this episode, Dax is knocked out yet again. And I thought it would be kind of funny if a plot at some point addressed this or acknowledged it. And just a line or something about how she's knocked out all the time.
That struck me as well. She gets knocked out in action sequences so often. I think it's because she's 3 million years old. So
she's fainting?
No, she's perceived as the most valuable character. I think that's what it is, because she has so much potential. And I don't mean Dax has a lot of unfulfilled potential, although that is also the case. But the symbiont could live for hundreds of thousands of years. If you put Dax in jeopardy, that's super serious.
If she dies, 7 people die.
Yeah, so she gets clonked on the head. That is 7 times worse than Bashir getting clonked on the head.
So you can knock out 7 people or knock out Dax. It's just more economical to knock out Dax.
Which is why it happens all the time.
We solved it.
The whole Dax plotline, I've got some criticisms for that.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so they're in this gas giant, and the pressure outside is phenomenal, to the point where it's breaking the hull of the spaceship.
Yes.
So they have this emergency force field that's dandy and actually really cool looking. And the force field runs out, so they would pressurize with the outside?
Yes, they would.
That wouldn't just be a bit windy, gusty. I don't know exactly how bad that would be, but it would be really bad. Everyone, Dax, Bashir, and all the guys in the lift would have been killed pretty much instantly.
But then we wouldn't have that scene of them huddled together, and Bashir not understanding the point of fantasies.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't have many scenes. It would probably destroy the ship.
Yes, also yes.
And these, I don't know exactly how bad it would be, but I imagine it would be incredibly violent. It would not be good. It wouldn't just be a little gusty and coffee.
It looked like a minor annoyance at best.
And Bashir runs to save Dax, which, okay, I've just suddenly had a realization based on what we said a moment ago. There were 6 people in the lift, but Dax is 7. So I guess he did make the right choice. But he seals himself, the doctor, presumably the only doctor, when everyone needs the medical help. And then, yes, shares his overly specific fantasies with Dax.
Bashir, anything can happen in a fantasy, such as making Dax actually like you. She doesn't have to hate you in your fantasy as well.
Yeah, if it's a fantasy, it was open-ended.
Yeah, it didn't even end in the best way for him.
It was like a prompt rather than an actual fantasy. Like, if it was a fantasy that you had, you'd think it would have like a beginning, middle, and end, not just, oh, we have to spend time together.
You are forced to be near me. That's my fantasy.
It was Bashir coming to terms with the fact that he used to be a cringy creeper, but now that's all buried, and he projects a more professional aura.
He does, though.
Yes, I'm not kidding. He really does. He really has buried that lechery deep down.
That must be so strange for you, going when you went back and watched that first season. He's so different.
There was a lot of eye rolling.
At least you have the benefit of knowing it gets better, whereas I was sitting through those episodes and thinking, what is going on with this character?
I think I even said outright in one of the early podcasts, yes, this character does get better. Because he is really bad early on.
I think I was even skeptical when you said that.
Well, it doesn't seem like it's possible, but I think he is better now. And for all his weirdly specific fantasy was kind of weird for him to share, it was nowhere near as bad as season 1.
Oh, no.
He did just seem like an awkward guy trying to share what to him seemed like a touching moment.
I'm gonna win her heart with this one.
Super interesting nitpick trivia. He was wearing a watch in that scene.
Why did that happen?
Because the actor was wearing a watch and forgot to take it off.
That is awfully reasonable and plausible.
Or an in-universe explanation, he was wearing a watch.
He was trying it out.
Well, yeah, you could just replicate a really nice one. If you don't like it, unreplicate it. Or even just wear it for a day and then unreplicate it.
They should go with it and have Bashir wearing a different watch in a bunch of different episodes.
With replicator technology, there is no limit to how much you could accessorize. Which, now that I think about it, there's a lot of shops on the promenade which sell little doodads and bracelets and stuff.
Because there are purists who don't believe in replicated jewelry.
That actually could be believable.
It's just not the same, man.
Well, the world nowadays is like that with diamonds, so yeah, I could easily believe that. There's plenty of people on the show so far that have complained about replicated food. So yeah.
So you can replicate clothing, right? How does it do the sizes? Do you give it measurements when you say to the computer what you want?
I assume you can replicate clothing. I don't see why you couldn't.
I want to hear Garrick's thoughts on the tailoring of replicated clothing.
Well,
anyway,
Replicator,
that's not this episode.
Replicator only has certain programs, so you would still need to go to someone to get specific stuff. There was a scene where Cisco told the probe to crash into metal things, and then they were all worried about it hitting them.
Yes.
Why didn't they just not give it such an incredibly simple program?
Too much work. Why do the work when you cannot do the work and endanger many lives?
When they program these things, it's usually just someone says to the computer, hey, program it to do this. All they need to do is say, also get it not to hit the ship it was launched from.
Someone did say that, but they had a mouthful of food and it wasn't interpreted correctly by the computer.
But the discussion is before they've launched it.
Yeah, they thought it would be a fun discussion to role play.
Okay. Hey, do you want the fussiest nitpick?
Always.
Kira prays for Cisco. The translator does not translate the prayer.
We've seen that before, though.
Yeah, it happens often whenever it's something meaningful, or poignant, or ancient, or whatever. It just doesn't get translated.
Because the computer knows it heightens the drama if we don't know the words.
It does for us, but for Cisco, who's sitting there, presumably for quite a long time while she's praying, that would send someone to sleep if he didn't know what the words were, just speaking gibberish softly.
She's saying a bunch of nonsense. I'm out.
It's good to see Quark getting some good time that's not either him bickering with Odo or him doing some outrageously sexist Ferengi thing for possibly laughs or drama, but it's never really clear.
Those are the two areas he's pretty much been limited to. So yes, it is good to see him outside of those two. And he excels. He's a good character when utilized properly.
So I bet you cannot wait for the next Ferengi episode.
Not so much. Waiting with unbated breath.
Do you have a wonderful quote?
Gambling is the last recourse of the desperate. Only a fool would risk losing what he has to chance.
A lot of people say that sort of thing, that gambling is really bad and so on.
We gamble all the time.
Yeah, everyone who's outrageously rich has taken some gambles in their life.
If you want to win big, you got to be willing to play the odds.
I'm not saying gambling is good. It is obviously a horrible addiction that you can have. So, but yeah, I like Quark's take on this. That you're being overly cynical if you don't think that there's risk involved in business.
If you always try to play it safe and never take any risks, then you fail by default because you won't have any big wins.
Well, you might win overall. I think Warren Buffett did a lot of extremely safe investment. He didn't go crazy with risk. But for every Warren Buffett, there was probably a lot of other people doing a similar thing to him, but they didn't get to the top of the pile in the end. I think society does have a weird stance on risk-taking.
There is a risk aversion that is encouraged and imposed upon people.
But at the same time, people who have succeeded, often doing things which are kind of risky, are revered.
Sure, when huge risks pay off, you look like a genius, but then when they lead to horrible disaster, everyone says, "See, I told you so."
The mystery of the human people. If only we were more like the Ferengi.
But we are like the Ferengi.
Not really.
I know, I'm just saying that because Quark said it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good persuasion technique, though.
What, tell people stuff that's not true?
Well, align yourself with them so they see you as the same thing. Anchor their idea of self with you.
That's what he does with Hannock.
Yeah, I loved when he compliments him after he's called out on his shady tactics, and how you're so brilliant to catch on to that.
I like it when characters do the same technique for buttering up a situation that they've done in the past, because Quark has done the same thing to Cisco.
Yes, that consistency is good.
Let's move on to the next episode.
Will it be a clunker? I hope not.
You never know until you watch it.
So let's do that.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan.
All right. Bye-bye.